Thanks for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Boaz. Phones are okay. My name is Boaz Kedar. I come from the municipality of Tel Aviv Yafo. It's just down the street from here, about 600 meters away. I'm an architect and an urban planner, and I want to bring you in. Huh? Oh, is it on? Okay. I'll speak to the microphone, so I can't move around. I want to key you in to some of the challenges that we face in our ongoing day-to-day work in the engineering administration at the Tel Aviv Municipality. Before I start, I know there are some Italians here and some Spaniards here. What's the best Israeli food you guys tried during your very brief stay? Did you guys have falafel? Yes. Did you? Anybody know what shawarma is? Shawarma? You'll find out in a minute. So this is Tel Aviv, and this is a view from the south. It's a view that when I show it to city officials, they really don't like this image. I mean, there's nothing in their eyes. There is nothing flattering or advantageous about it because it's taken from a high rise, a very new high rise. I think it's something like the 20th floor. In a neighborhood in the south of the city, but overlooking this neighborhood right here, which is called in Hebrew Shchunat HaArgazim. It's one of the oldest, old in Tel Aviv terms. Tel Aviv was founded in 1909, so it's I think it's a neighborhood from that started around the 1920s or 30s, and most of it is unregulated. You can see the houses are kind of almost half temporary. It's now it's about to undergo very intensive urban renewal, and I like it because it shows in the background where we're headed in the next 2-3 decades. So this is shawarma. It's a Turkish meat dish that we really love. I personally like it very much. The concept of shawarma is that you have a rotating skewer, like a metal skewer with meat on it. And the fact that it's rotating is you can see the flames in the back, the heat in the back. And because it's rotating, it gets toasted from all sides, just like the person walking in the streets of Tel Aviv, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. Because we're used to getting, and Oded, Professor Pochta spoke about it very eloquently, we're used to being exposed to solar radiation from above, and there is some reflection from below. But what I'm going to show you today is when you're walking in Tel Aviv, essentially in any modernist city, you're getting radiation not only from above, but also from below, and from the sides, and from your front and back, and essentially you're turning into one of these shawarma skewers. So before I show you why that is and how that is, a few numbers. I think Guy showed this slide, or maybe this slide. So just for you guys to put it in perspective and put it inside a framework, what Tel Aviv is and what we're dealing with. So we're just under 52 square kilometers. We have nearly 500,000 residents in the city. That's including the 425 formal residents, and we have some undocumented. I say some because they're undocumented, and we don't know how many there are precisely. The estimate is between 50 and 75,000. But the more interesting data is in the bottom of the slide. So we're planning essentially another 50% of built space with different uses and allocations in the next 10, 20 years. I don't know if you guys know this, but Israel has the highest birth rate and קצב גדילה, or yeah, thank you, population growth in the developed world. I'm not going to go into why that is. It's sociological and psychological, but the fact is that this city is the cultural business social hub of the country, and every young person, essentially, with all humility, every young person in the country at some point in their life wants to come live in Tel Aviv. It's like the big city, offers a great deal of opportunities and everything that goes along with big cities, but that also means that the city keeps growing, and it needs to speed up development in all aspects. So in terms of public building, we roll out approximately one new public building every month. Every month. That's about 10 per year. Public buildings are either schools, school extensions, kindergartens. We don't build kindergartens at ground level anymore. We build them in stories. We call that a kindergarten cluster, like a cluster of grapes. So the standard kindergarten cluster is 4 stories high with 8 kindergarten classes, 2 in each floor. The kids have very large balconies, which we use as open yards. Of course, there's an open yard at ground level too, but it's quite small. The plots are quite small. And the brown plots in the city, the plots allocated for public building, are becoming a thing of the past. They're becoming more and more scarce and rare. So I just brought these from another presentation to show you, just as in broad brushstrokes, from a bird's eye view, the different parts of the city as we see them. So we have about 13, 14 kilometers of shoreline. We are about here, okay? We have the red line is the Ayalon Boulevard, which is it's a highway going from the north to the south of the city. We have not the old city of Jaffa, but the old quote unquote city of Tel Aviv, which I'll show in a few slides. And we have the central business district. The white city is a part in the center of the city that was declared by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site for Bauhaus and international style building. And we have in the northwest of the city the last remaining large land parcel for new neighborhood development. It used to be an airport, a national airport, not international, a national airport called Sde Dov. I don't think I'm showing it in this presentation, but it's the last one we have. So this now is a view from southwest. You can see the Ayalon Highway, and you can see the central business district, and you can see that from a very traditional, very mid-rise building typology, we're going more and more towards a high-rise or tower. We call them towers. I think the tallest tower that crossed my desk at the engineering administration was 87 stories high, and it started construction about a year ago. Toas Stein. I'm gonna really go briefly over these. I just wanted to show you that differently from many European cities that you may know, we're a very, very young city. We don't have a very ancient tradition. If we were sitting in Jerusalem, the discussion would be different. But Tel Aviv is essentially a very young city, a very new city. It came up a bit poetically. It rose out from the sand dunes, and it became what we know today to be the cultural and business hub of the country. But having said that, the center of the city still has a very large, a very strong and a very healthy skeleton, very human scale skeleton in terms of urban design and urban planning. We see one of the first boulevards of the city. I'm not going to go into the planning of the first years, but we're trying to maintain the same DNA and more specifically the same level of thinking, a human scale, human-centric approach. And Professor Pochta also mentioned this in conducting his measurements from the person's perspective, from the citizen's perspective, the person walking in the street, how their comfort level is. That should be our main concern. Yeah, so we're a startup city in a startup country. You guys went to City Zone last night. I heard it was great. We have Jaffa, our old sister down south of here. You can actually see it. I mentioned UNESCO, and one more thing. Jaffa used to be a mostly Arab populated city. So ethnically, we're also very varied. It's a part of Tel Aviv. It's now a mixed city, both Jewish and Arab. I wouldn't say that it's a tension that we feel in the day-to-day life. I would want you to think about it as it's sometimes referred to as an island of normal human-based interaction. Okay, so even in the business world, you can see people from all different aspects and all different ethnicities and religions. This doesn't go. I mean, this is not something to be taken for granted, as I'm sure you know. Beaches. A bit about the structure. So on the right, on your right, you see a historical map of the urban plan of the layout of Tel Aviv. We're gonna visit some of these squares today. I'm just gonna run over this because I want to get to the main part of the urban heat island. But I want you to keep in mind that this urban skeleton of green infrastructure that I mentioned before, we're still enjoying it today thanks to our professional forefathers, so to speak. So the architects and town planners about 50 and 60 and 70 years ago had the insight to design the urban layout in a way that we're enjoying the generous shade of these trees today and the walkability and the human scale design of these boulevards today, because they had the insights to lay them out and put them in place. And by the way, most of these trees are so generous and so healthy because they were able to send their roots outward and get water and nutrition from the private plots that run adjacent to the road. Sorry, parallel to the road. We watch them very carefully. We have about 250,000 street trees. Nachon, guy? Yeah, 250,000. That's both municipal and private. Some of them are in private plots. I think I have. No, I don't. But never mind. And we have several types of parks. This is Habima Square that we're going to visit in a few hours. Wanted to talk about the street typology a little bit, but I think I'll leave that out. Oh, one last thing. This is just one snapshot from. I'm sorry, part of the slide is in Hebrew. From a study we carried out with a couple of researchers from the Technion, Israel's Institute of Technology in Haifa. It's available for public viewing. I can send a link to it if you'd like. They actually created a series of shade maps for us, for the city to use in our day-to-day planning. They developed a very interesting index. The more red the path is, the less shade it has. You can see that the center of the city is quite blue, light blue, white, and blue. This is where most of the historic, generous, healthy trees are. You can see the north, which some parts of it are are better than others, and of course you can see the highways and more major roads that have no shade at all. I think this concludes this part of the conversation. So onto more optimistic things. This is why we go to work in the morning. This is what we have in front of us. I lead a very small and actually quite new department of about 3 people, all urban planners. And we always keep in mind, and I'm not a climatologist, I'm just an architect, but we always keep in mind that we don't have the luxury of looking away because we live in one of the roughest neighborhoods in the area, not just geopolitically, not just security-wise, but also in terms of climate. And when we look at the built environment in the city, keeping in mind the heat island effect, which you guys know about, right? You spoke about it yesterday. When we look at the implications of the heat island effect on the city, we always have to keep in mind these people. These are people who construction workers that work outside, the elderly, which a lot of times live in outdated apartments with no air conditioning. They're limited in their mobility. They're sick most of the time, and we have to keep in mind that these are the people we're working for. We're not working for the guy working in the 35th floor of an office high-rise on Ayalon, working for Google or whoever. By the way, they are on the 35th floor. They have about 20. We're working. When we're working, we have to keep in mind the fringes of society, because if we deal with the fringes, if we're able to address their needs, everybody else is going to be taken care of and will fall in line. So, who knows where this is from? It's from a movie, guys, a sci-fi movie. No. Oh, yafeh. This is, so I don't know if you ever saw two suns in the sky outside of the movie Dune, but I'm going to show you 2 suns in the Tel Aviv sky in a minute. A couple of years ago, we hosted a study from the joint study from the Technion and from the Beersheba University in the Negev. This guy right here is Professor David Perlmutter, and alongside with Dr. Or Alexandrovich, which also did the shade mapping analysis for us. They traveled the city streets with a cart like this, and they measured several climatic aspects of urban climate. I won't go into the study. I know very little about it professionally, but you can see this is Rabin Square. This building right here is the main municipal building, which has a very interesting story. If you look at climate, if you're into climatic design, I'll talk a bit more about it when we're there. This on the bottom right is Habima Square. And this is Giv'on Square right here, which we're also going to visit this afternoon. And I promised you guys 2 suns. So here's the sun, and here's the other sun. Okay? Again, this is sun number 1 in the sky, and this is sun number 2. And when you're sitting in Aroma, the cafe, right by this building, look at the shade of the canopy, the umbrella, and look at the other shade. Can you guys see it? It's a shade under a shade, or a shade within a shade. So these are the people on the right. This is one of their interns, Rachel. You can see the cart right here. They'd been walking in the streets for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. They wanted to sit down for an iced coffee, and they sat down in this square under this canopy, and they said, whoa, something's not right. We're under the canopy, but we're toasting, we're being fried. And they looked up again, and they saw this sun that was reflected from the nearby tower, which is glass clad. This is it, by the way. This one on the left is from Bat Yam. It's another city right south of here. Yep. I mean, these are all luxury buildings. The apartments sell for millions of shekels, and the absurdity of it is we have a very stringent compliance code for getting a building permit in terms of green building. We have the Israeli standard for green building. It's called 5281. Some buildings, mostly built by multinational conglomerates, choose to accredit their buildings through LEED, the American green building standard, which we allow. But despite these very stringent codes, they both, and I come from the green building world, and I believe in it, and I've been endorsing it for years. But all the green building codes deal with the building quality for the person inside the building, being very efficient in your use of electricity, a very well insulated envelope. Some of the more progressive ones even deal with interior air quality and biophilia and things on a higher level, but none of them take into account the building's effect on the outside. So we said we're human-centric, and we're looking out for the guy walking down the street. We can have the greenest building, LEED Platinum, what have you, 5 stars, but if it's heating up its surrounding area, it's something we can't have. So we, oh, by the way, this is something a friend sent me just 2 days ago. This is a northern window. You can see reading right here. You can see the beach, the sea here. So this window is pointing north. There should be no sun whatsoever coming from the north. And look at the shade on her shirt. So she said, I'm in my office. I have to work with my shades on, and I can't see my screen because I'm getting a huge glare from the building just north of me. I don't know if you know the story about the Guggenheim in Bilbao. The Guggenheim in Bilbao was hailed as one of the largest, most expensive and most complex projects of its day. And several months after opening, they had to shut it down and so Frank Gehry, God bless him, had a very forward-thinking vision for cladding, an external aluminum cladding, which was very, very progressive at the time. They planned it using the most advanced computer software modeling at the time. Yet when it opened, the glare was so strong that they had to shut it down, put scaffolding all around it. They had to brush the aluminum to reduce the glare. Another example which you may know, again, sorry about the Hebrew on the slide, is the Walkie-Talkie building in London. I don't know, have you guys heard this? I forgot to ask, any architects in the room? Yay. Tzadika Besdom. No, just kidding. So the Walkie-Talkie building in London, just on the south bank of the Thames, hailed as one of the greenest buildings of the time. HVAC system which cost tens of millions of British pounds, and yet when it opened, because of the concave facade, it created what they call the death ray. So at a certain time of day, the solar radiation, shortwave radiation, was concentrated, and the area around here, which apparently was a side of the street for parking, was so hot that people could fry eggs on the hoods of their car, and the building had to be shut down, and the whole facade had to be treated for making it less glossy and less reflective. And we know that the geometry of the facade is one of the easiest ways to tackle this problem. So what we did in the municipality is we looked for a methodology that we could ask every new building, especially high-rise building, which we have popping up. We have, so across my desk, we have about 350 new permit requests per year. I'd say about 10% of them are high-rise buildings, which are taller than 25 or 30 stories. Some of them even mega towers, which are 60, 70, 80 stories high. So we developed this methodology. We developed it from scratch. We looked far and wide. We looked at cities like Seoul in Korea. We looked at Dallas. We looked at Cape Town, Sydney, Perth. We couldn't find anywhere in the world that this was done. So we went ahead and developed our own methodology. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to run through what it does. This is an actual building in Kiryat Atidim, where you guys visited last night, City Zone. It's a new building. All these buildings in the sketch are existing, except for this one. So this is how the architects and green consultants presented it to us. So the building is state-of-the-art in terms of envelope insulation, and it's a double skin insulation. But they run it through a series of analyses and simulations, and they actually measure the amount of radiation that each facade gets, except for the north one, 4 times of the year. Okay, so shortest day of the year, longest day of the year, and 2 mediatory days. And I'm not going to bore you with the actual data, but I want to show you graphically. This is the what we call the fan shade. So you can see that the morning sun, and this is December. This is the shortest day of the year. The morning sun will start here. This is the shade. So this is east, north is here, and the long shade here is the shade in the afternoon, at the end of the day. And when we take all these analyses, we ask them to compare it to a similar building with orthogonal facades. So instead of the facets that you see on the right, we ask them to compare it to a building with straight facades, 90 degrees to the ground. I know you guys aren't architects, so I'm not going more deeply into this, but you can see the difference, especially here. Look on the right with the faceted facade, the way that the radiation on the ground is all dispersed, as opposed to the straight facades where you get the same amount of radiation but concentrated. There's an animation I want you guys to see. Hang on. So on the right in blue, the plant facade. On the left in pink, the straight facade for comparison. The different breakdowns during different times of year. And this is what I wanted you guys to see. Can you see it? So this was the architect convincing us that because of the breakdown of the facade, the effects, the heating effects on the ground level adjacent to the building will be far less harmful than a straight facade. So anybody know where primo non nocere comes from? Primo non nocere. The first lines of the Hippocrates oath, first do no harm. The oath that every doctor has to swear all over the world when they get their license. נכון? שבועת היפוקרטס. Yeah? So first do no harm. For us as planners, as urban planners, and as architects, I think the first order of business should be, if you come into a plot, an existing plot, or even an existing urban fabric where something else exists before your intervention, your first order of business must be working in a way that won't make the environmental conditions for the user more adverse, or first do no harm. So this was important for me to share. It's quite new and quite novel. It's been around, this methodology, for about a year. We've asked, I think, about 25 or 30 new projects to undertake this analysis. And maybe you want to ask what's the point of this of this methodology, and what are the outcomes? So at the end of all these simulations and calculations, what we get is a very clear mapping, a simulated mapping of where the intense heat areas are expected. And then when you look at the entire plot, you can plan shading. Most of the times it's artificial. You can plan shading in a selective and really efficient manner. You won't have to wait until the building's erected and constructed and occupied to do this. You can do it ahead of time. And more importantly, you can mitigate the effects of this through your design. So in this project, I just showed how the facets of the building are utilized for this. Other buildings just that wanted to keep a straight facade usually have like a stainless steel mesh as a second skin to the building on the south. I don't have any photo of this because none of the buildings have been built yet. This is quite new. Some have played with the orientation. Some have broken their facades to facets. So this is something we're quite proud of. So it was important for me to share with you just an application of the theory that I showed, that both Oded showed, and I showed you with other studies that are undertaken in the city, and show you that we're taking this very seriously. So it's not just about street trees and shaded footpaths. It's also about taking care of the very large buildings that are, we have the land value, the highest land value in the country, I think, in Tel Aviv. So these entrepreneurs will jump through any hoops we ask them to. I'm being a bit dramatic, a bit harsh, but it's true. So this is a way for us to ensure that the buildings that go up in the city don't become a nuisance in terms of heat. There are other things we address as well, but this is what I wanted to share today. So thanks very much.
If there is one or two questions before we move on.
Hey, really interesting. Thanks for that. I wanted to hear your take on, in Tel Aviv, I live in Tel Aviv, on all the big open squares that we have. Like we have Habiba Square, we have even here in Tel Aviv, like we have all these enormous squares that seem to me like a little bit of an odd use of space. Maybe not. And I'm sure, and I know walking through them, it gets very, very hot during the day, kind of like we discussed. So I wanted to kind of hear from you what, I guess, maybe as part of a larger vision of the city, what the purpose of them are, and if there's any talk or discussion about maybe repurposing them for maybe greener, maybe different use that might cool the city or something like that.
I don't have it's a great question. It would be great for me to answer with a really good photo of Habima Square, but I don't have one. So we're going to have a walking tour in a couple of hours, and we're going to go through, I think, 4 squares. Four of them? Yeah, something like that. Mayor Huldai calls Rabin Square the square of democracy, and Habima Square the square of culture. So these are like 2 urban nodes that are extremely important for us as patrons of the city, if I may, to provide for the citizens. If you live in Tel Aviv, every large demonstration, doesn't matter what it's for, political or non-political, takes place in Rabin Square. It has, I could say, a national importance. By the way, the former name was Kikar Malchei Israel, and it changed its name to Rabin Square after Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated at the square in 94, 95. So it's important for a city to have, I think, a large open space for citizens to be able to gather. I wanted to show Habima Square, which is the one paved in very, very pale stone. It's one of the worst places to be in summer, when it's hot, because you're really getting the shawarma effect to its fullest. You're getting toasted from above because there's no shade. You're getting toasted from below, and you're getting toasted from the sides because the buildings are reflective. However, having said that, and I don't want to sound like a city bureaucrat, but maybe I will. What we had before we had that square was a huge parking lot of about 350 parking spaces with the national theaters around it. The Habima Square project was the largest project the city has ever undertaken through its own initiative. We built a 6-story car park underground instead of that parking space, and on top of it we built an open square. It was extremely expensive. The engineer that designed this car park had never done underground car parks that deep in Israel. No one ever did it before. So might not be a good answer, but it was replacing, the square is actually replacing something that's very outdated, very a thing of the past. And the city said, the mayor said, who are we going to bring to design this square for people not to object? And we said, we gotta think of like a really big name and figure. And they brought Dani Caravan, which is a world-renowned artist, landscape artist, I think is the right term. Well, when you bring an artist to do an architect's job, that's what you get. Sorry, this is not just me saying. This is almost everyone in Tel Aviv.
Last quick question.
Another question. I'm not architect, but I was involved in a project, an IT project 10 years ago in the West, about the possibility to improve the quality of life in the city in terms of sustainability. And it was a roof garden and vertical garden with different type of plants and plants, basically in the different countries in the different area, in order to raise the data, to get the data for the scientific, in order to split this information and identify which was the best material, the best plant, in order to
The best plant species?
specific in every country.
Wow.
Yeah. And my question is, in all this, I never heard about, for example, vertical garden. I don't know if by an architectural point of view there are problems, but should be nice for me, that ignorant and that, to have vertical garden that automatically will change the shadow of the, to be even more garden, more healthy in terms of look and feel.
Okay, so great question, great point. I should have brought you some examples of green roofs that we have in the city. I wanted to keep the focus. By the way, yeah, I know, but what you're describing, we call that a green wall or a green facade. We have a very famous one in Tel Aviv on the Checkpoint building. It's a startup, I think by the same founder as PayPal. It's it's a very well-known startup. So when they built their new office building, it's not very high. It's I think 10 stories. They have a very nice green facade facing west, and it's green, and you can see it from the highway. It has a very high visual impact, and so we have a few here and there in the country. These days, through my work through my department's work in the municipality, we're initiating a citywide policy for green roofs. So at the end, you're not. It's starting to. We're going to start it on public buildings, buildings that are funded by the city, by the municipality. We have about 500 of these in the city, and gradually it's going to be mandated for any type of building, so commercial, private, and so on. So we're on it.
Roof is okay because it's quite well known.
But the walls, I have to say, it's quite a challenge in our climate, and the challenge I think is maintenance.
Yes.
So we'll get there. Thanks.